Good evening, all. Thank you for your attending tonight on tonight's Town Council meeting on Zoom. I would like to wish you all a happy new year and hope you had a nice Christmas despite all the restrictions. I'd especially like to welcome Councillor Alan Wilson, Vice Chair of SALC and of the Shropshire Climate Action Partnership, who will present to us tonight. Over Christmas, the Town Council were pleased to work once again with the Machwenlock Parish Church and Illuminate Effects to light up the church for Christmas, allowing for a thoughtful reflection and pleasant extension of the Christmas lights. Due to the lockdown, we've seen more cancellation of events, such as the Crime Prevention Day with our local police team, and the much anticipated visit of the High Sheriff of Shropshire. Both these events have been cancelled, and we hope both can be rearranged. It's important to highlight that this edition of the Machwenlock Herald will be an online-only publication due to the lockdown. So please look out for its publication on the church's website and social media pages. It serves a very useful document for our local events and news, and we're pleased as a town council to support it financially. Over the Christmas break saw the sad and sudden loss of a lady who did a lot for this town and this town council. I have fond memories of Susan Billas, both personally and through my time on the town council. She has taken a range of photos on council events, from mayor makings to where I actually personally escorted her at the Battles Over, where she took photos of the crowd and the beacon of the hill, not to mention her work in the cemetery. Finally, a reminder to all that Machwenlock Mutual Aid stands ready should anyone have need of its services. The COVID rate in Shropshire is still very high and local lockdown rules must be obeyed, but I know personally of people who are having the vaccinations and have had the first doses, including my grandmother this afternoon. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, but we must keep to the rules for now. Now to item 2. Town Clerk, do we have any apologies?
No, none. You're all here.
Excellent. Item 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest. If anyone has an interest, they should declare it now. Oh. Item 4, dispensations. Dispensations should have been submitted in writing to the Town Clerk. Trudy, have we had any?
No, none received.
Thank you. Item 5, Shropshire Council report. To receive a verbal report from our Shropshire Councillor, David Turner. Councillor Turner, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. My report this evening is fairly short, and it's dominated by planning issues. 37 Barrow Street. The footway outside this property has been blocked by Harris fencing now for 13 months. Inconvenience to residents continues, and whilst inquiries of the solicitors to the deceased estate have yielded assurance that a buyer is in place, that situation has existed for some months. There's also a cost to the taxpayer of keeping the fencing in place. I've therefore urged council officers to escalate their approach, which will hopefully see a partial or complete resolution of this unsightly problem. Turning to Buildwas, I referred at your last meeting to the Buildwas planning applications, the impact of which will be felt in Machwenlock, saying that Shropshire Council's Southern Planning Committee might expect to consider it in February. Highways England put a holding objection on the application due to concerns over Harworth's traffic modelling for junction 6 of the M54, and Harworth are presently undertaking additional traffic modelling, and Highways England will need to be satisfied before the application can be heard, so it's more likely now to be in March. As regards change of use at number 13 St Mary's Lane, this planning application is one of 4 that will be considered at next Tuesday's Shropshire Council Southern Planning Committee meeting. It is being determined at committee because of local objections, and I trust that the Town Council will submit its representations to help the committee reach its decision. That concludes my report, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Turner. Councillors, do you have any questions for David at all? Brilliant. If not, then I thank Councillor Turner for his thorough report, and thank you very much. Item 6, police report. To receive a report from the local policing team. If I understand correctly, PC Mark Goddard is on the call. So he may be muted.
Don't-
No, no, perhaps not.
No, no. Chair, I don't know that there's somebody on as Galaxy A5, which may be a member of the policing team, but as it's not a name, I don't know.
No, we've obviously had the report emailed to us all by councillors. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to read it out or just to note it and move on with a packed agenda.
I mean, members of the public might be interested in hearing the report. If you'd like to read it or you'd like me to read it, I don't mind.
I'll quickly read it out. Update on policing from the original Broseley Much One Look Safer Neighbourhood team. The coronavirus regulations, a new lockdown has been introduced, will be in place for some time. S&T officers will continue to patrol and monitor the area. The police approach nationwide will remain. We seek to engage, educate, explain, and as a last resort, enforce with a fixed penalty notice. There have been 2 reports to the police in the reporting period concerning breaches of coronavirus regulations. Each has been dealt with in the appropriate manner. Antisocial behaviours continue to be seen at a reduced level, and this is likely to continue with the lockdown in place. The neighbourhood team will still continue to patrol the areas where there have been previous reports of coronavirus breaks and areas of antisocial behaviour. Safeguarding. S&T officers are working with our partner agencies to safeguard a number of youths from the town identified as vulnerable to exploitation. In addition, support is given by the S&T and partner agencies to a number of victims of domestic abuse. As a result, S&T officers will be maintaining contact with Williambrook School regularly during the period of lockdown to stay as informed as possible regarding any vulnerable children. The number of planned events at a number of schools in the new year will help with engagement to our children, but has been postponed due to lockdown. Theft. There are 2 stock fences that have been stolen, and a driver was arrested for being over the legal alcohol limit for driving. And finally, engagement. Due to the lockdowns, our plans for engagement have been postponed, and they're looking for ways that we can engage in the town that are within the guidelines of the coronavirus regulations. So that's the report from the neighbourhood police team. We'll move on to Councillor Anna Wilson of item 7, the presentation by Shropshire Climate Action Partnership. Councillor Wilson, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Daniel said, I'm here as Vice Chair, and it's my portfolio role to deal with climate change within SELC, and that's what's brought me to be involved with the Shropshire Climate Action Partnership. I'm going to share my screen if I could be allowed to do so, Trudy.
Ooh, share screen. Let me
Go to my icon.
One participant can share at a time. That's already on. So
Go to my icon.
Yeah.
Where the blue button is with the 3 dots. Make me host.
Make you host.
I'll give it you back, promise.
I'm taking a risk here, everybody. So if anything goes wrong.
Okay, thank you for that. Right. Please bear with me. I'm just going to now share the screen that I want to do. And you'll all go to the one side. Okay, all happy with that?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, like I say, Shropshire Climate Action Partnership is a group of like-minded people, multidisciplinary in their thought processes and skills. From lay people right the way across the board to professors are involved in this. It involves local councils, that's the authority councils as well, in support, NHS, environmental agency, and numerous of the green movements that we've had in Shropshire for a number of years as well, all coming under this one umbrella to try and achieve the goal of a zero carbon Shropshire by 2030. That target, I should point out to you, is different to the government's of 2050. It's also different to the agriculture sector, which is their target because they've got a massive task on their hand, is 2040. So this is not designed to influence the farming fraternity in any way, shape or form. So acting for the benefit of our communities and environment is what the title of this story is about. All the people involved with this are tasked with researching stuff which has been put in this presentation that is fact. There is no opinion. It comes from the Committee for Climate Change and various government departments reports and United Nations reports. So all the facts are literally that, facts. And of course, because it's based on scientific fact, we rely on science to tell us what's going on. So I'll give you an example. We all know now from the fossil record, 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs were wiped out from the planet. That was one extinction of one set of animals. The flying ones continued to live. We know also from the fossil record, there have been 6 mass extinctions on this planet since its birth, just over 4.6 billion years ago. And that's the dinosaur one back in 65 million years ago. But this is the one 251 million years ago. And that's where 80% of the marine life on this planet died, and the same amount of land, animals, and biomass died. We know this from science. We at the top, man, have now been utilizing this stuff that was killed off. We call it coal and we call it oil. And that's where it comes from. That carbon that was buried at that time is what we've been burning now into the atmosphere. And we know for the last 800,000 years that the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere have pitched up to 300 parts per million. It's only in the recent period, since the 1700s, that coal has become more and more used. And of course, in the later part of the 19th, 20th century, petrol came about and other forms of burning hydrocarbons. So as a result, certainly since the 1950s, this has peaked. It is now at 415 parts per million, which is bad news for the planet. And the reason it's bad news for the planet, having so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, is because it has what's called a global warming power. That means it retains heat. Consequently, when the sun shines on the earth, it absorbs heat in everything. And then at the night time, as it spins round, it then dissipates that back out into space. The only snag is it can't all dissipate like it normally would. It's being trapped by the CO2 molecules and other greenhouse gases that exist from man's creation. So they're all being trapped in the atmosphere, and that's what's causing this warming effect. Equally, by trapping carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it heats up the planet slowly but surely, and that is causing desertification around parts of the globe. That means it won't support herbage. So that's dying off. It can't support life in that locality because it can't grow food. Equally, in the sea, carbon dioxide sinks into our seas and oceans and acidifies the water. The animals that live in the sea are alkaline based to the majority of degree. That's why they're able to grow shells, seashells and that sort of thing. And those are the carbonates that they grow into shells. With acidification, that they can't achieve, so they're dying off. And they estimate in the last 200 years, 50% of all the species on the planet have died. Of course, we didn't know this was what was going on. We do now. Equally, we know these things more because we've got satellites in orbit around us that can measure not only the temperature of the oceans, but also measure the amount of CO2 that's actually trapped in the atmosphere. So that's what's going on. So you might say, what's this to do with council business? Well, in 2008, a law was created that was called the Climate Change Act. And it was agreed that 80% of greenhouse gases should be cut to a 1990 baseline by 2050. In other words, we've got to cut down on our use of carbon. That was agreed at Kyoto, and then it was later agreed at Paris that these quotas would be done. With the scientific information coming in, as a result of that, in June, the scientists effectively convinced the government that they need to actually make it 100% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. And that is what the country is on course for, and the globe is on course for. It's a question of how well we can sequestrate and reduce our carbon emissions as to whether we reach the 1.5 degrees centigrade that we need to achieve. Unfortunately, because we've been so tardy in the way we've looked at this, we are actually on target for by 2030 for a 2-degree C atmosphere, unless we alter our business as usual approach. Now you might say, what's that still got to do with the council? Well, because it's law and you've got to start sequestrating carbon and reducing your carbon footprints as a council, that affects you in your buildings and any vehicles that you may use and any processes that you may have under your belt, because as a council, you are still accountable for those things. So your clerk is going to have this business come along, explain to her, and that's what this is about, educating and making people aware what it is. Now I'm going to move my slide across a fraction more to give you a better picture. When Kyoto was done, there were 900 gigatons of carbon dioxide given to the UK as its budget. That is it. That's all you can spend now between 20 and 50. So it was divvied up and what's called grandfathered down, and that is megatons of carbon dioxide, which is Shropshire's equivalent to that budget. And then Telford and Wrekin's is very similar, as you can see. And the idea is that we reduce this over that time frame. But what we're actually saying to you is that we need to reduce it by 2030. And the reason for that is this. If we carry on as business as usual without doing anything about the way we burn carbon ourselves, that's energy, and this is purely about energy. This has got nothing to do with our imports. In other words, the stuff that we get from, say, Hong Kong, where this laptop comes from, my flip-flops that I might wear that come from Thailand, or clothing that we get from Singapore, India, and these other places, all imported to this country. And the same with our food. Asparagus from Peru, raspberries from Morocco. It's all this tertiary stuff that is added. If we were to add that in, that would be another 48% on top of this. And that's what the problem is. If we carry on as business as usual, this budget we will burn through by 2027. If we don't start to mitigate and we count in our imports and all the rest of it, we will burn through that budget by 2024. And that's the problem. This is what you're not being told. These are the facts. They can be verified. And that's why us as human beings on this planet, that's why I've left the farming and industry out of this. They've got different agendas because it's more complex. However, we, near enough 8 billion of us, have got to try and put something right. Most of the energy goes into transport. Most of the energy goes into heating our homes, but it's a way of sorting things out that needs to be addressed. So how do we become a zero carbon Shropshire by 2030? By asking organisations, homes, and all the rest of it to come on board and do things. We put out a zero carbon Shropshire plan, and that's being done. You can get it from zerocarbonshropshire.org, where it gives you a series of things that you can do, simple things to do. Now comes the next part. We as councillors and we as councils will have to influence people one way or another in assisting us and by educating people, because when people start to ask questions like they have done with COVID-19, at least you've been in a position to add and give signage to them as to where they can get support. And also preparedness for the events that are happening, such as harsh flooding, these infrequent things that are really out of ordinary. And when I say out of ordinary, how many of you had April showers in the last 3 years, which normally supplies water for the growth? And that's why we've had such a poor harvest from the farmers. They've got no say in it. That's just nature and the way it's working. But it is the global effect that's having this impact. The reason I show this slide is because that's the big bulk of people. I fit in this top category, and by the time 2030 comes, I will be 85. Okay, so these are the things. Sorry, I'll be 75. So how do we do it? We have to reduce our carbon footprint, and the way you do that is go onto this type of website, carbonfootprint.com, and you simply put yourself into an individual or small business, and you then put in all the things that are asked, click that button, and it gives you a result. You should be, because of the UK, 11 tons per person, because we're in an industrialized country. My wife did ours the other day. There's 5 in our household, and ours was 12 tons. So something's got to be done by me to reduce our carbon footprint. And that's what it's about, understanding what's going on. This is where most of the energy goes, out through walls. Even if you've got double glazing and cavity wall and all the rest of it, all these things have got to be improved before you can change. And gas, by the way, will be changing from natural gas to including hydrogen in 20% parts in the natural gas. And then eventually we'll have to go to all electric heating. So new houses won't be built with gas following 2025. It'll be illegal to put a new house on the gas main. This is a tip for you as a council. This is what Little Wenlock have done. They've put photovoltaics on the roof of their village hall and storage batteries where they're keeping information, keeping the electricity stored so that it can actually be used when required. They're also going to get a biomass heater to actually do the space heating there. It's not only the village halls, but it may be facilities you've got in the area as well. Just this one at Meal Brace where they've gone and put EVs on the top. It's not just playing bowls during the day, it's also entertaining people of an evening that keeps it going. You can go green yourself by getting your own cheap green electricity. In other words, it comes from renewables. And that's how it's done. So the next thing is you could get grants to improve your own. Now I'm conscious of business time and all the rest of it. Am I allowed to allow Arthur Hill in, Trudy? Thank you. Okay, right. I'm going to stop sharing at this point and field some questions. I've got a load more slides after that, but I've covered the points mainly for the council and councillors and their responsibilities in relation to their properties. I go on further to deal with people and some of the things that they can do more and stuff that we can at zerocarbonshropshire.org, where you can join and sign a pledge to try and be zero carbon by 2030. Right, I'm open to questions.
And thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Councillors, obviously, I draw attention again that the site is zerocarbonshropshire.org, where you can sign the pledge and see more information, including some of the slides that we've got through today, as well as it's been emailed to councillors. Councillors, do you have any questions for Councillor Wilson at all?
It's okay. Everyone gets shell-shocked. I'm not probably. It's just one of those things when you're presented with facts. Marcus has got his hand up.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful if we had some idea of the incentives that the community are given to afford some of it, because it is expensive to go green. It's very, very expensive, but also possibly a bit of a big elephant to eat in one go is we've got an awful lot of listed properties in Wenlock here, which we can't, we can't sniff at them, without, what we probably need are conservation grade solar panels that fit in on our lovely tile roofs, and so it would be quite nice if there were a conservation grade of double glazed window that we could actually put in instead of this 2mm handmade glass that we have to use.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
we've got houses here that we just cannot go green with for various reasons.
I can assure you, Marcus, that the government are looking at how to retrofit houses for carbon efficiency, and they've already identified that they will not be able to deal with 10% of that housing stock. And I would imagine, notice this is an opinion, because I haven't seen the document, it's not due for publication until June this year from the department, from Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Until then, once that's published, we'll have a more definitive answer as to what they're going to do with retrofitting. But I know from the research that we've done for air source and ground source heat pumps and water heat source pumps, they know that they won't be able to fit 10% of the housing stock of the country. So when you got that beautiful black and white house behind Matt as his screensaver there, those are the sort of things you're talking about, Marcus. And I think reality will dawn. And I can't see Rowley House in Shrewsbury being clad like Grenfell Tower. So, there will be some practical solutions to this. Does that make sense to you? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, David.
With the amount of fast-flowing water we have in Much Wenlock, would there be any possibility in years to come to introduce some sort of small hydroelectric generating system? And equally, on small pieces of land that attract the sun, in small communities, would it be possible to have our own little solar panel set up?
Yes, you could, but here you go. As councillors, here comes the planning application, and how are you going to resolve that? Because this is going to be about renewables. This is going to be an up and coming challenge for you all as councillors as well, because you are in an area that they will say it will be spoiled, but you're going to need energy because the capacity of the grid in Shropshire is virtually full. So it's going to be a tall ask of any council and councillors to make these decisions, because they will be a massive impact on how future generations live as well. Any other questions? Okay, I'm grateful for your time. Thank you very much for allowing me to give this presentation. If you want to know more, like I say, please go to zerocarbonshropshire.org, and I'll just bid you a very peaceful night. Bye for now.
Very much, Councillor Wilson, and you'll make Trudy host again on the meeting.
Just doing it.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Cheers. I'll leave you in peace. Bye now.
Thank you. Agenda item 8, public session. We had 2 requests to speak, but because of the duplication of what they were saying, we have just 1 person speaking, and that is Arthur Hill. Mr. Hill, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman, for the chance to speak. This concerns the planning application, which is about to be put in for Callet Nash 2. When we had the planning meeting the other night, which Chris and I both spoke at. We were not aware at the time of the report published by WSP, who are the council's contractors who deal with drainage and surface water, etc. They're put in touch by John Bellis. Now, John Bellis, the council planning officer for floods, etc., had already been in touch with us, and as a flood group, we'd given him all the details we needed from Chris Bowden's report on Calletnash 1 and the severity of the flooding it caused there. Now, our decision to to object to the application by Shropshire Council Connexus to do this thing didn't arrive in time, but we've been in touch with Shropshire Council since, and we can object to it. But what I would like you to consider, please, as a town council, that you also object to this application. Now, on Tuesday night, several councillors expressed the wish that you included in it that we are all in favour of affordable homes in Much Wenlock, but need something to done about the drainage on Calletnash 1 before they start Calletnash 2. That is not a strong enough motion to go to the council planning officer. I would like you to consider objecting to the development of Calletnash 2, and then the South planning officers and the planning committee can at that stage put conditions on them to make them do this, and our conditions are exactly the same as in front of you, Gavin Wong's conditions for rejecting it. So I would like you to consider your motion when you come to discuss it in 12A. Everybody in Wenlock knows that you are in favour of affordable housing. We all are. But this is a specific item that we need to get rectified. Otherwise, this is going to be a problem for us going forward.
But thank you very much for your time. You just exceeded the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll consider that when we get down to 12A. Item 9 is to approve the minutes and adopt the minutes of the Town Council meeting held on the 3rd of December 2020. So that includes the minutes 3220, 3320, and 3420. Can I see any issues or anything with those minutes, councillors? If not, then I propose they are true and accurate record of the meeting. Seconded. All those in favour? Excellent. Item B, to adopt the minutes of the Planning Environmental Committee held on the 3rd of November 2020, including the minutes 2520, 2620, 2720, 2820, and 2920. Councillors, any issues with those minutes at all? If not, then I'd like to propose that they are true and accurate record of that meeting. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 10, Town Clerk's report. Trudy, over to you.
Yes, thank you. You've all received a written report from me about what I have been doing. And I think just in addition to that, I have attended a couple of seminars, online seminars, remote seminars recently. One was provided by Ellis Whittam, which is our employment law advisor, on 10 ways to employee well-being, on the basis that as so many individuals, so many employees are working remotely now, that does bring with it extra mental health problems and extra difficulties with the work and managing working life, really. So that was just a quick half hour, which hopefully gave me a few tips on how to keep the staff engaged and happy. And also a seminar today, which was about the 2021 census. And you'll see that's on your agenda slightly further down, just to draw councillors' attention to the fact that that will be happening. And the council will be asked to help promote the census and encourage engagement from the community. In terms of working, because of the lockdown, we are working from home largely again and trying to go into the office only when it's necessary. We do have a rota so that we avoid each other, but there may not be somebody in the office every day, because if we don't need to be there, then for preference we'll work from home. So unless that's all I have to say, I think, unless anyone has any questions regarding my report.
Councillors, questions for the town clerk at all? If not, then I'd like to thank Julie for her report, and we will move on to item 11, which is the 2021-22 budget, and to consider for approval the draft budget. We have our responsible financial officer with us today. Diane, if I could call on you to just kind of take us through with an overview, including percentages increase.
Okay, thank you. Shropshire Council has been preparing its revenue estimates for 21-22 prior to calculating council tax, which will be levied in April 2021. As part of this preparation, tax bands for all parish and town councils have been determined. Much Wenlock Town Council has been advised that its tax base based on Band D equivalents will be 1,203.5 in 21-22, which is a reduction from 1,220.73 equivalent in 2021. In terms of the council's precept, this means that to show a 0% increase in the precept for 21-22, the council needs to work from a base of £201,456 rather than the 2021 precept, which was £204,432. The budget in the agenda pack includes some suggested revisions and reductions to the budget as a result of this reduction in the tax base. So just turning to the budget, on the right hand side, which is the expenditure side, you can see that there are 3 columns. The left hand one, 2021, is our current budget. The one in the middle is the budget, which was the original budget for 21-22. And the one on the right hand side is incorporated the suggested revisions as a result of this reduction to the tax base. And these changes are highlighted in yellow. Do you want me to talk through those?
Yes, please. Thank you, Diane.
So the first one, audit fees, actually that's a slight increase because I did find when we received the invoice this year for PKF Littlejohn external audit, that we were going to fall into a higher category next year due to our expenditure on the Gaskell Recreation Ground. So I've increased by an appropriate amount as a result of that. Staff training and conferences, you've got a figure, a revised figure of £570. Since that was drafted, I was actually invited to an end of year Zoom training session, which I've accepted, which is a cost of £30. So that figure is now 600, not 570, just to note that. And turning to the budget for 2021 for staff training and conferences, we anticipate a spend of £600 this current year. And what I suggest we do is put the balance of that, which is £400, into reserves. And with a budget of £600 in the next financial year, that in combination with the reserves gives us £1,000 available to spend if needed. Down to election expenses, we put 0 in there. Anticipated expenditure for the current year is 0. So I suggest we put £3,000 into reserves from this year. Add that to the 5,000 that we already have in reserve. So that gives us a total of £8,000 in election reserves. The elections, if they go ahead in May or later in the year, won't be billed by Shropshire Council until 22-23, not 21-22, hence the 0 in there. Moving on to page 3 of 5, 10 High Street rates. As you know, the building is a listed building, and whilst it's unoccupied, it attracts no rates. Bearing in mind the current restrictions and difficulties we're having, I've assumed that rather than the building being occupied from the 1st of April, it's probably more likely to be the 1st of July. So I've deducted 3 months equivalent worth of rates from the budget and reduced it by that amount, which is 1,650. So that's where that reduction figure comes from. Page 4, civic events, mayoral civic events. The spend for the current year will be £250. So again, I'm suggesting that we reserve the balance of 500, add it to the revised budget of 500, which then gives us £1,000 available for a civic event, should we be able to have one, hopefully sometime later in the year. Similar again, civic regalia, the £500 in the current budget is unspent and is likely to remain unspent. So if we reserve that money and add it again to the 21-22 revised figure of 250, we'll have a pot of 750 available to us. So the net effect of those changes reduces our expenditure to 260,754 and gives us a precept of 208,203, which, based on the slightly lower figure of 201,456, gives us an increase of 3.3% on that figure. Does anybody want to ask me anything?
Councillors, any questions for Diane at all?
It's very well explained, Chairman, and very well
Absolutely.
put out.
No, thank you, Diane. It's obviously we understand the reasons why it has changed ever so slightly due to the amount of people eligible also to pay the precept. And in that regard, I'll go through it page by page if councillors have any discrepancies, or do we have any questions for Diane at all?
No.
I thought it was very clear, Chairman.
So in regards to considering and approving the budget, the draft budget, just first say everyone's happy with page 1 of the revisions? Everybody's happy with page 2 of the revisions? All happy with page 3? And 4 and 5. In that case, I would like to propose that we approve this draft budget and precept for 2021.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favour? Motion carried. Excellent. Thank you very much, Diane.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome to stay on the call, but you're just as welcome to get off. Thank you for your hard work.
I'll leave now. Thank you.
Oh, just before Diane goes, could you just give me the figures again, because there was a slight revision on what was on the printout. So could you just give me the overall expenditure figure again?
Yeah, the overall expenditure is 260,754.
754, which leaves a precept of 208.
203.
203.
Yeah.
Okay, smashing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Diane.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
So moving on to item 12A, to consider a recommendation from the Planning and Environment Committee with regard to response to consultation on application 20-04432, erection of 14 affordable dwellings with associated parking, roads landscaping on proposed residential development land to the south of Callerton Ash, and to agree comments to be submitted to Shropshire Council. Councillors and members of the public paying attention will realise that this had been considered by the Town Council's Planning Committee in December, and in that time there was we had a couple of requests in writing to reconsider opposition, and secondly the drainage advice from WSP had changed. So looking at it and following due diligence, it was back to the Planning Committee on Tuesday night, which was well attended by members of the public and town councillors, who have then made a recommendation. We thought to put it on the full town council to give other councillors not on the Planning Committee a chance to speak and to make their thoughts known as something that is important for the town. The Planning Committee have come up with a recommendation which was rather thorough, and I will call on the chairman of the Planning Committee, Councillor Mary Hill, to talk us through a recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we start, as Daniel first said, we did put in a comment to Shropshire Council way back in December. It originally read, as you've got a comment on, it was the original thing that we submitted was, let me just find the right thing. We originally sent as a comment to support the principle of affordable housing development on land to the south of Callerton Ash, on condition that the drainage problems on the existing development at Callerton Ash be remedied before any building begins on the new site. We had a comment from Richard Fortune, the planning officer, to say that he was not prepared to put any conditions. In other words, he would not accept under any action in considering our comment. So I felt we had no option but to rescind and reword our proposal, which we did on Tuesday night, which I'll come to now. Because it is such a big thing in the town, we thought at this point it needed to come back before the whole town council. And if I read what we thought we could do as our submission, I would like to explain that on Tuesday night, what we said, the new resolution was this: that Much Wenlock Town Council supports the development of affordable housing on this site, but cannot support the application in its current form due to the poor design of the drainage system. Councillors support comments made by Shropshire Council's drainage consultant, WSP, and the views expressed by Much Wenlock Flood Group with regard to the drainage scheme, which took out the business about having a condition placed on it. It does make very clear our dislike of the drainage system, but I've had a long conversation with Arthur Hill, who you've heard tonight, and he feels it would be advantageous just to adjust it again slightly. Instead of saying we cannot support the application in its current form, he feels that it would be better to say that we object to the application in its current form, simply because in planning terms, when we respond to planning applications, we have three choices. We either support, we object, and the third one I never remember. Trudy, what's the third one?
It's make a representation.
Which was really neither one thing or the other. And it's very clear that our attitude is that we cannot support the development in its current form. So in other words, it would be better if we'd actually used one of the proper words. So with your agreement, that is the proposal I'll put before you in a moment. I will reword it, I'll write it, I'll reword it before I ask for your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Sorry.
Can I just
Yes.
ask the councillors for their comments about, you've heard quite a lot over the last few months about this development. I do feel it's important we emphasise that we support affordable housing. I mean, we know about affordable housing and our opinions about it. We need to be shown that we do appreciate how difficult it is. And we have got a lot of people waiting to have their own house in Wenlock. So I think it is important that we emphasise that we do support affordable housing. Is there anybody who would want to make further comments at this point?
Councillor Hill, there's quite a few hands up, so I'll just, before we go to them, I'll go to Councillor Whiteman first. He had his hand up first. I'll just get the town clerk to read out exactly what the planning put word for word, just for a point of accuracy, if that's okay.
Of course.
Town clerk, could you just read out exactly what the planning recommendation was?
Well, we've got it here, Chair. We've got it in front of us.
Yeah, sorry, I can see that what the planning committee discussed on Tuesday night was to put in the comment that Much Wenlock Town Council supports the development of affordable housing on this site, but cannot support the application in its current form due to the poor design of the drainage system. Councillors support comments made by Shropshire Council's drainage consultant WSP and the views expressed by Much Wenlock Flood Group with regard to the drainage scheme. But Councillor Hill has just suggested that there's a slight amendment made to that. So
He wants to change it from not support to reject. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so it would then read, but objects, so support the development of affordable housing on this site, but objects to the application in its current form.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Whiteman, your views, please.
Yes. Well, that's very much my feeling, Chairman, that we should put the words in. Objects should go in there. I think that'll be fair enough where it's suggested it goes. We should object to this application, as have the drainage people. You've seen the report, I think, Chairman, from what's they call WSP. They object to it. I think we should object to it in the strongest possible terms, Chairman, because the drainage on this first development and on the second development proposed is not adequate, and we should object to it, Chairman. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your views, Councillor Whiteman. Councillor Harper, your views, please.
Yeah, if you could bear with me, I think there are other reasons that we should object. Not definitely the flood-related situation, but also I think there are other things. So, if we explain what this from the previous application, so this is planning application 200443, isn't it? Which is phase 2 of this development, and it's on 0.65 hectares of land, which again is very important in relation to this application. At the moment, there are 4 objections registered on the website of Shropshire Council and 2 in support. This follows from a previous application, which was phase 1, which was dealt with in 2016, and that was on 150 hectares. Again, that's important. At that time, there were 18 objections to that application by the residents of Much Wenlock and 10 supporting it. So the total of the 2 phases is 2.15 hectares. And that becomes important when you look at the National Planning Framework. So the application is for 14 dwellings on what the submitted application on numerous occasions indicates as phase 2 of this development, which is on a rural exception site at Calais. And there's a difference between a rural exception site and an urban exception site. Phase 1 was for 12 units, and this is for 14. So there would be a total of 26 units on this development, the complete development. It has been seen that the pre-application from this development, if you've all read the pre-application, which is on the Shropshire Council website, it was actually intended that they would make an application for market and also affordable dwellings. But eventually they put in an application merely for affordable dwellings. It seems essential that we need to ensure compliance with a number of factors in relation to location of the settings of such an exemption site. Shropshire Council Local Development Framework Statement of Consultation on the type and affordability of housing supplementary planning document indicates exception sites are not a free-for-all, but a careful balance of considerations in which the bottom line is that such sites would not normally be allowed housing development. And that's paragraph 78 on locations, if you want to look at that. It appears to me that there are issues that need addressing in relation to this application, not just in relation to flood issues. Issues that are not being addressed, even though we are no doubt fully supportive of affordable homes provision. I don't think all of us would say that we support affordable homes provision. In fact, it should warrant even more security, in my opinion, as we will, as I'm sure all agree, that to place affordable home residents in new properties, which are then subject to flooding, cannot be right. It can't be right that these people who have taken residence up there, I believe at least 3 of them have been flooded. That's not right. Issues appear to me to be, despite the applicant's insistence in the submission that phase 1 has been a success, those of us who have been to assist the residents of phase 1 during several flood events since the properties were occupied will know that it is not correct at all. It is not a successful site. If you read their drainage plan, they've been around the farmers, they've been around everywhere, and they say it's a completely successful site. That's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Residents of phase 1, even the residents, there are 2 on the website, indicate that this is in relation to the application, that it does, the phase 1 suffers some flood issues. That has been recognised on the 5th of January 2021 when Shropshire Council Drainage Department, following appraisal by WSP UK Limited, as consultants of Shropshire Council have submitted objection, and that is a strongly worded objection to the proposed surface water drainage strategy. I believe that based upon our own experience and advice from our own local flood forum, we should strongly support that objection by the drainage officers of Shropshire Council. The second point, and that is where the actual areas come into account, National Planning Policy Framework at 71 with footnote 33 reads, entry-level exception sites should not be larger than 1 hectare size or exceed 5% of the existing settlement. The total area of phase 1 and 2 will be at least 2.15 hectares. I believe we need to address that in relation to the applicant. We need to draw that to the attention of Mr. Fortune and ask him why it appears that this site of 2.51 hectares in total can still get approval. 3, the Shropshire Core Strategy sets a figure of a maximum of 20 dwelling units on an urban exception site on a settlement above 3,000. So where there's a settlement, a town with 3,000 people, you could have up to 20 dwellings. This application will make it up to 26 dwellings, and we are not an urban exception site. We are a rural development site. Now, the Match Wenlock population, the core strategy has given us 2,200. So guided by that figure, the Much Wenlock neighbourhood plan, and it's our plan, set a figure of 10 as a guide for a small scale affordable housing unit developments. So in the formation of the Much Wenlock neighbourhood plan, the National Planning Policy Framework, Shropshire Development Plan, and the local consultations were all considered. And that plan, and you would read it on pages 4 and 5, indicates the legal requirements in relation to the neighbourhood plan. Our policy is H5 under Objective 1, housing, which indicates the proposals for small-scale affordable housing developments outside the Match Wenlock development boundary will be supported by us to the following criteria. They comprise up to 10 dwellings. And then there's the word "and" that follows that.
Councillor Hopper, you're dangerously over exceeding the time allowed.
Well, Daniel, I think to be fair, this is one of the biggest applications we've had recently. And I looked at the widdies on the previous application, and there's about 20 different points, and yet we're only focusing on one. So yeah, I'm almost at the end anyway.
Thank you.
But I think it's important that we should be considering these points. The neighbourhood plan indicates the reasoning for the figure of 12 is to compliance of NPPF and Shropshire Council's interim planning guidance on affordable housing. And it also, and importantly, it's there because it reflects the character and scale of the settlement. And that's the crucial point. We should have sites that are reflecting that scale in development. And it says we would support the policy, but taking into account that. So when the application for the original one in 16, it was for 12, which is a 20% increase above that 10. This one, if it's considered as a standalone unit, is 40% increase in policy H5. And if you put the two developments, 1 and 2 together, that's a combined total of 26 dwellings, which equates to plus 160% above Much Wenlock neighbourhood plan policy. So I think we should also object on our own policy, which is there to reflect the character and scale of the settlement. No one really wishes to object to the provision of affordable housing, but we must have it right. We must have it in the right places and it must be safe. Residents of affordable housing have the hardest of times in flood events. It's shown that naturally and are so often not insured. We owe it to the future residents to ensure that they are safe. And that's why I think we should object. I think we should object certainly on flooding. We should certainly object in relation to the failure to comply with national planning policy framework and also the development would be development contrary to policy H5 of the Metro Wenlock neighbourhood plan. Thank you, Daniel.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Hopper. So to sum up, you have reservations about policy H5, which
what I say, it's not in compliance with policy H5 of the national.
Fair enough, I understand that. And the second part was regarding, so there's H5. The second part was regarding the hectares and the third part as well. So Councillor Park, your views, please.
Me, Park, yeah. It was just really to pick up on what Councillor Harper's just said. Although he did give a lot of information and it's somewhat a little bit confusing, I don't think it would be right to object on the fact that Callerton Ash already has 12 properties when it should have only had 10. Would that not make us look rather stupid for approving that in the first place? I don't think we should be raising that point when, although I wasn't a councillor member, that was put through. So previous councillors would have approved having 12 when you've just mentioned it's all in the plans that it was only 10 that were allowed.
Well, that's supposed to be 10, but it was stretched to 12 to make it it wouldn't be financially viable on 10. So it's stretched to 12, which is 20% increase to make it a viable proposition, which is understandable because they did spend a lot of money. Those properties are 130% of value of normal affordable house. So the town council had no objection to 12 rather than 10. It says guidance. It's not a target. But when you stretch it by another 2, which makes it 40% over, then you'd say, well, can that be open to challenge in that 40% is a lot more than 20%. But overall, the development would be 26, which is actually 160%, which I'm sure legally, if somebody did put a judicial review challenge to it under policy, I'm sure it would be looked at carefully. 160 is quite a considerable amount of uplift.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. They do state that they're separate applications. The reason it's called phase 2 is purely for identifying the location.
Yeah, sorry, Daniel, I've heard that, but that is not correct. If you actually read the documentations, at every stage of the application, it says this is phase 2. And even the first application, if you look at a subsequent application for a disposal of conditions, that indicated phase 1, phase 2. So I hear what Mr. Fortune is saying, but the application is clearly for the second phase. You look at the plans, every one of them.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Harper. Councillor Fimmins, your views, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Well, Dan's certainly not convinced. Bert's certainly not convinced me that we should change our the recommendation from planning. We've as a council, we do have a history of you only using various guidance, various PPGs and neighbourhood plans as guidance, and have been those quite at certain opportunities. I think this is an essential development. I think it's essential enough that we do support it. It isn't our decision in the end. It's got to remember this. It is Shropshire Council that are going to decide. And I think if we start putting up, nitpicking sort of objections to this, it sends a really negative message that we don't want affordable housing in Much Wenlock. And I think you need to be very, very careful about the message that this town council sends out, because we do live in a world of dog whistle messages, and that is the message that we will get across to both the developers and also the people of Much Wenlock. So I think you've got to be very, very careful about this. Support it in principle, but on condition the drainage is of a suitable nature.
Excellent. Thank you very much,
Daniel, can I say I'm not suggesting that we don't go ahead with the objection of flooding. What I'm saying is you need to, this is our neighbourhood plan. This is, we've been criticised heavily in the last few years for not conforming to the neighbourhood plan. We've said we have, but here's an opportunity to show that we do read the neighbourhood plan, we do understand the neighbourhood plan, and H5 is a clear policy in relation to it. All right, we didn't object to a 20% increase, but when it comes to 40% increase or 160% increase, then I think we'd be very, very foolish, because that 10 was based upon the consultation with the members of the Much Wenlock.
You didn't object to 40 extra houses on Hunter's Gate too, did you? So, let's not say it's all put in stone, for goodness sake.
Great. Thank you, councillors. I think we're clear. We can see policy H5. It does mention that it's guidance in there. I think we've heard enough on that, to be honest. Councillor Holyoke, your views, please.
Yes, I think, yes, we have to quote the neighbourhood plan. It might have been a good thing if we'd reviewed it as we were advised to do. Then it might not have come out quite the same. That's another story. I think we ought to point out to people that this site was the only available site to connect us in the whole of Wenlock. Other sites, yes, they're available, but they're not at the price. Or there are other reasons why they couldn't be taken. This fitted the financial situation of the connectors, and they have to work on government guidelines. It's up to us to support this social housing in our town. We need it. I don't know where else we're going to get it at the moment. I don't know about the numbers. 14 sounded all right, but if you want it to be 12, have it as 12. But I still think we need these. People are sitting, waiting, Chairman, watching. So I would stress we must support the actual concept of these houses in this site, because there's nowhere else.
There were 18 sites. Dan, your own land, the Thomas land was considered. There were 18 sites that were up for review when you were on the project board, Yvonne, from the earliest. You will know that there was the Tench land, there was the Breakwell land, there was the Parr land. All these sites were up for consideration, a total of 18. Surely there's still a site. What you're going to do is put people.
Councillor Harper, they're not. This isn't about other sites. We've had this. This is what definitely come and gone. This is just one site.
Yvonne's just brought in about other sites. There's no other sites, she said.
So thank you. So we'll move on to Councillor Matt Park, please. Your views.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's very important that the council sends a clear message that they support affordable housing, and I think the Callerton Ash site it is probably one of the most suitable sites in the area. I think we're very lucky to have such an opportunity to have these houses within the town. I do take on board the concerns about the drainage, and I do think that can definitely be improved. I think there is a better solution to be had, and I think if we can provide some steer on wanting that, to also help address the flooding and alleviate that, then that's definitely a bonus. But I think we need to be very clear on our messaging. I think the affordable housing is very important, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. And 14, I would say, is absolutely fine. But if we have to have 12 to see it through, then I would also be in favour of that. But what I would not be in favour of is outright rejecting the application without proper reasoning.
So you wouldn't be in favour of outright objecting, which is something that Councillor Hill had alluded to in just tweaking our original proposal. Councillor Jenkins, your views, please.
Very briefly, I think we should support objecting to this site. Councillor Holyoake mentioned that this was the only affordable site. Affordable, in my understanding, is because it was unsuitable land for farming because of the well-known flooding problems of that lump of land. So I don't object to affordable housing, but I do think there are other more suitable locations for it, but possibly Connexus can't find somewhere affordable, if that makes sense.
Partly. It's been farmed on for as long as I can remember, and before on. It was this site that was they chosen, have gone with, and it's the only one they're looking at and only plan to look at. Councillor White, we haven't heard your views yet because you're not on planning committee.
Yeah, I have to say I'm quite torn here because clearly the WSP report says that the drainage is unsuitable. I would like to see us object to it and ask them to bring back another planning application with upgraded drainage systems put in place. And of course we support affordable housing. And it grieves me to have to object on those grounds. But what I don't think we can afford to do is to build more houses where there's already a flood problem. Absolutely. With a second flood system that clearly isn't up to scratch. According to the experts, I'm no expert, but I don't want to be part of allowing more flooding to happen on top of what we've already got.
Too true. Yeah.
Excellent. So all councillors I've spoken tonight, or they've spoken at flooding as well. I'm looking for a proposal. We've got the original response from the Town Council. Councillor Hill, would you like to just lead us through what your final wording was?
Yes. Much Wenlock Town Council supports the development of affordable housing on this site, but objects to the application in its current form due to the poor design of the drainage system. Councillors support comments made by Shropshire Council's drainage consultant, WSP, and the views expressed by Much Wenlock Flood Group with regard to the drainage scheme. That's the proposal I put forward.
I second that.
We've got a proposal, is on the table. It's been seconded by Councillor Firmins, and I'll ask all those in favour to please raise their hand. All those against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Excellent, thank you very much. Item 12B, to note the Shropshire Council is inviting reputations on the local plan review regulation 19, pre-submission draft of the Shropshire local plan. We need to, excuse me, and the deadline is on Friday, the 5th of February. We'll need to consider a response. So we note that they were inviting representations. Can I have that as noted, please, councillors? I propose that we note that. Seconded. All those in favour? Motion carried. Item 13, Transport Working Group. To consider a report from the Transport...
Excuse me, Chair.
I think the town clerk was guidance.
Sorry.
Oh, am I? Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
You need to consider a response.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought we read to note it.
No.
And to consider a response.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
We need to consider, if you look at what they're asking, is, as I see it, we need to consider, are all parties, do we consider that they've actually complied with all requirements in relation to, that's what a section 19 is about.
Sorry, apologies. Councillors, your views, please.
Well, I personally, I would have thought they have, because they've consulted, haven't they? They consulted section 18 consultation. They've consulted with us, and they've come to the conclusion, and that's it. But they have consulted.
Sorry, Councillor, apologies.
No, it's all right. I was just going to say that I understand that this consultation is on the soundness of the plan rather than the content of the plan. But it had been suggested by members of the Transport Working Group that comment could be made on the strategic corridors that are highlighted in the plan. So I don't know if that would be appropriate if councillors wanted to consider that.
Yes. In fact, I will just get them back up. I seem to have mislaid them. Bear with me a second.
I think I did that. I did include that in your papers.
Yeah, we've got it. Yeah.
That, yes.
What they're saying is Iron Bridge, Shifnal, and that sort of thing. It's all part of the M54 corridor, but of course it will have a major consideration for Much Wenlock with the Iron Bridge part, which is of course part of the local plan.
And so the comments for the Transport Working Group regarding the strategic corridors for consideration and approval of the Town Council is in section 14 SP14. Strategic corridors is described as Eastern Belt, M54, A5, A41, A464, A4169, A458 and A454. It is difficult to connect these roads into anything resembling a corridor, and it appears that the council has simply included all the ACAS roads within the county boundary, avoiding Telford and Wrekin. Clarification of exactly where this corridor is located and how it connects together is lacking in SP14, and this should be addressed. A plan would be useful. The council's inclusion of the A4169 and A458 points to Much Wenlock as being part of the Eastern Belt strategic corridor. It should be clear that this section of these two roads is unsuitable to accommodate the potential development pressures that will come or be identified as a strategic corridor. The junction of the two roads in Much Wenlock, the Gaskell Corner, is already under significant pressure from HGVs, buses, agricultural vehicles, commuters and pedestrians, and has proven itself incapable of being upgraded by the designers of the Iron Bridge Power proposal. It is not a junction improvement, nor is any junction improvement included in the infrastructure plan. Therefore, Much Wenlock will be impacted by an unnecessary increase in traffic at the junction, which will lead to an increase in the already severe problem of vehicles rat running through the town. Councillors, any comments on the town to the Transport Working Group's amendment?
Well, to me, it seems, especially after what David said at the start, that the Highways England are putting a holding objection in relation to Iron Bridge. I would have thought this is a crucial addition back to Shropshire Council to say, what are you on about? These roads are not suitable for what you're talking about. The M54 corridor is completely different to the A4169, especially the A4169 passing through Much Wenlock. So I would have thought, I take this as Paul and David. And,
yeah, members of the public and councillors, as you mentioned.
Yeah, well, it seems a very good point to me, especially with Iron Bridge as part of the local plan, so in our place plan area as well.
In that regard, unless there's anything else, councillors, Councillor Wadham?
Yeah, well, Chairman, I agree. It's quite impossible, the Gaskell Corner, to put any more traffic on it. And the only answer, I'm sorry, I've got to repeat it again, the only answer is to have a bypass. If the Iron Bridge people want to go ahead with their scheme, they should be made to pay for, or partly pay for, a bypass around Much Wenlock to accommodate it. That's the only way you can deal with it, Chairman. You can't possibly put any more traffic on that Gaskell Corner, as has been just explained.
So, councillors, any other views?
Yeah. I propose.
You propose that we submit the comments as per the Transport Group recommended.
Definitely. Yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Jenkins.
I just wondered if I could read out some words that Paul Hannafin has supplied me with, and which the clerk has a copy of. Lots of questions raised and a bit of duplication.
Councillor Jenkins, is that for item 13? Is there anything in it specific that's relevant to this, or can we just wait for that item?
It's relevant, but if I got the impression you were going to supersede and overlook me, so carry on, and I'll take out item 13 now.
Well, I was looking. I think we've got a proposal to submit the comments from the. I've got a proposal on the table to submit the comments from the Transport Working Group. And unless you've got anything to tell me different for that, we'll wait to item 13 to go through your report, please.
Thank you.
So I've got it proposed, and I just need a seconder, please. Thank you. All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 13, Transport Working Group. To consider a report from the Transport Working Group. Councillor Jenkins.
Thank you. I must state, first of all, give my thanks to Paul Hannafin, who, not a councillor, who has compiled and spent a lot of time considering our transport problems. And as I alluded to just now, there is some repetition for what has gone before and a lot more questions raised. So I'm now reading from a prepared statement from Paul, which I mentioned has been supplied to the town clerk. Firstly, the Buildwas Power Station. Shropshire Council has read the objections that have come their way, including from the Town Council, and rejected the applicant's improvement schemes at the Gaskell Corner in favour of a financial contribution, plus a contribution towards a study into the impacts at the junction of all proposed developments in the area, Cressidge and Tasley, etc. It is proposed that we should continue to monitor closely the progress of this application and keep pressing for the best outcome for Much Wenlock. We will obtain a cost estimate for the rejected improvement works, so we will have some idea about the sum we are seeking to obtain via section 106 from the applicant. If successful, the question would be, should the monies be spent on improvements for the users of the Gaskell Corner junction, or should it be spent on measures to reduce the rat running through the town, which is likely to increase as a result of this power station development? Second item is to do with Shadwell Quarry. There is a significant increase in the lodges / caravans from the permitted development levels at the quarry. This will result in increased traffic movements. Should the applicant be requested to quantify what this increase will be and provide a contribution towards the mitigation of the impact? And I should add here that, of course, there are no SIL involvements with these developments. So next one is the Calton Road housing. Paul has pointed out this is a social housing development which suggests younger couples and young families. In a report from the applicant's highways consultant, it is claimed that all the existing pedestrian routes are acceptable. However, the busy Bridgenorth Road crossing to the primary school is a very low standard and has been subject to local concerns. The question at the end is, should this applicant be asked to provide a safety upgrade at the A458 crossing to the school? The next item is the Shinton Street pedestrian safety, and I would like to suggest that this is something which could be addressed more readily. What is the issue here? From observations, it appears that if nobody, either residents, parked on the Keep Clear road markings, there would be plenty of space, visibility and opportunity for northbound drivers, i.e. going from the Bull Ring towards the school, for northbound drivers to pull in if a vehicle comes in the opposite direction. Should we be focused on ensuring the safety of pedestrians, including the many school children, walking along the eastern footway? So that's on the Bastard Hall side of the road. The northern section of the A4169 of Shinton Street has black bollards installed along the pavement. Should we try to have this extended along the southern section of Shinton Street to prevent vehicles mounting the pavement while still allowing access to drives? And lastly is the Much Wenlock resident transport survey and really how we should proceed with this. What are the views on how or whether this should take place? Do we, for example, contact all the residents via the Wenlock Herald and other means to ask 4 or 5 questions on transport? And should we also take the time to find out the details of local business transport issues? That has been submitted through me by Paul Hanafan, and possibly we could ask Paul if you wish to make any more comments about this.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. I mean, some of those things we probably, in hindsight, maybe I should have moved this earlier in the agenda so we could have used those points when considering 2 of those items, which, but I hadn't had this report until now, so I wasn't totally aware. But thank you for the report. I think there's a few things in there that we do need to look at, and it'll be quite probably difficult to discuss them now. I think it might be prudent if we use some of the report to look for agenda items for next meeting. Councillors, could I have your views on doing that, please?
Yes.
Because that would give us time to look at it again, partly because it was quite long but very thorough, and it's pleasing to see work and suggestions already coming ahead. So I'd like to thank yourself, Paul, and the councillors and the members of the public, including 2 of them on the call, for their hard work in that. Councillor White, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just think congratulations to the group. Very constructive, very useful, and I think a lot of those suggestions are well worth taking further forward. And I can see some very quick solutions if we can get people on board from the Highways Department.
In that case, I propose that we use the report to form some agenda items for February's Town Council meeting. And I'd seek a seconder on that motion, please. Councillor Jenkins, all those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you very much, Transport Group. Item 14, reinvigoration of Much Wenlock Town Centre. There's not many changes from the last one, except that the signs have been made up and are ready for collection. They will not be going up anytime soon because we, as a council and as a committee, we feel it is probably the wrong time to be promoting visitors to the town for obvious reasons. So in that regard, once the lockdown is lifted and it is appropriate, we'll be seeking to put those up. Can I take any questions from councillors regards to the reinvigoration of Much Wenlock Town Centre and the COVID fund? If not, then I'll thank myself. I'll thank the group for the report, and we will move on to item 15. You'll have seen in my Chairman's welcome, I mentioned the sad and sudden passing away of Suzanne Boulas, and we have a request in a way to help mark that. So, Councillor Hill, over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Excuse me. Just for information, Suzanne's funeral will take place at Shrewsbury Crematorium at 1:15 on February the 9th. Obviously, the current restrictions, numbers are extremely limited, and there will just be a few invited people, family and a few friends who will be attending that. But I'm informed that the hearse will make a procession through the town on the way to the crematorium. I shall receive information nearer the time as to when that will happen. It's after the next town council meeting, so I can give you the final details of the procession, for want of a better word, and that time. In regard to Suzanne, she obviously is being cremated, but her ashes are being scattered where her husband's ashes were scattered in Wales, over water in Wales. And so there won't be any memorial in the town in the form of a cemetery plot or headstone. And Lisa Lentil, who works with me in the cemetery, and Suzanne and Leslie. I haven't spoken to Leslie yet because I wanted the backing of the town council. I have a suggestion, or Elisa and I have a suggestion, to make a small garden plot in the old cemetery where she spent so much time. She loved roses, and we thought perhaps a couple of roses and a few more pretty perennials would be appropriate. We would be very happy to maintain that plot. Her family are supportive of this suggestion and have asked if they might provide a bench alongside the proposed flower bed. And I think that would be, you know, a very fitting memorial. Suzanne loved working in the cemetery, spent a lot of time tidying and generally taking in it the interest in the upkeep. Well, I haven't found a plot. I have a suggestion for a plot, but the town clerk and members of the Friends of the Cemetery will go up before February, because Suzanne's relatives have asked. There will be a few family flowers, and they've requested that they bring them and place them in the old cemetery after the cremation, which again is a nice tribute to us, and particularly obviously for Suzanne. So I'm asking the backing of the town council since we are responsible for the old cemetery, for your permission to dig a small garden plot in memory of Suzanne, and to give the family permission to put a bench alongside that plot. So could I ask for your formal permission?
Thank you, Councillor Hill. So just to sum up, there's not going to be a gravestone or anything in Wenlock, and this would provide a bench with a rose bed or flower bed, and she loved roses, for someone who did a hell of a lot of hard work over the years for the cemetery. Councillor Whiteman, you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, I fully support what Councillor Hill has said. As you say, Suzanne did an awful lot of work at the cemetery. I think it'd be very fitting if you did have a rosebed memorial or something like that. And did you say the family were willing to put
yes, they'd
a bench?
Yeah, a bench. They've asked permission.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that'd be ideal, Chairman, and I fully support it.
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Your views, please.
I wonder, having recently seen a little video on YouTube with Suzanne in the museum, if it would be appropriate at the town council's expense to provide a little framed photograph with a few words underneath it to add to what we know about Suzanne. We don't in this country have the practice of putting photographs on gravestones the way they do on the continent. And I think it would be fitting that her picture is there to remind us all.
I'm not 100% sure that would be wholly appropriate personally. Though I did quite like the idea of the flower bed and the bench. Councillors, your views on those, please?
Yep.
Councillor Hollyoak, would you be just in favour of the bench and the rose bed, or the photo?
Absolutely.
Just
I think we ought to fit in with the family here.
Yes, well, that's what the family would like.
Exactly.
Councillor Harper, your views, please. Thank you, Hollyoak.
Yeah, I think the flowers and the bench especially, I would have thought was very appropriate. I've done about photographs, especially in the cemetery, if that was a suggestion.
No, the idea was for it to be in the museum. A little.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
A little photograph with a few words underneath it.
Yeah.
I'm still not entirely sure that's appropriate, but I would like to go with the bench idea. So, could I have some more views and with a view for a proposal, please, councillors? Councillor Hollyoak.
I'll propose that we support the idea of having a rose bed and the bench, and the fact that the keepers of the cemetery have agreed to look after the plot too, which is wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Hoyer. Councillor Nat Park, are you proposing or speaking, or sorry, seconding or speaking?
I'm seconding.
Excellent. All those in favour for the rose bed and the bench to replace in the old cemetery? Excellent. Vote is unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much.
I'll inform the family tomorrow that you have agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 16, lockdown project. To note an update on progress for the project to gather a record of local experiences of the coronavirus pandemic for retention in the archives. Councillor Hill, over to you again.
Thank you. Sorry, you'll be fed up with me. Just to give you an update, I had originally planned to bring the project to an end at the end of 2020, but of course we were all expecting when I started it that the main part of the pandemic would be over, but clearly it isn't. And of course, Christmas was such a different experience this last year. Well, it was a non-experience, wasn't it, really, in the town? And so I felt that it was only right to extend it into this new year, 2021, and to include an account of what Christmas was like this last year, and also to end on a note of comments about the vaccinations, how people felt when the vaccinations have become available. Just to inform you that we have got up to date 46 individual submissions to the project. And there are more to come. I think there will be at least 50. And I ask your indulgence. I'd just like to read just little snippets from 4 or 5, just to show the whole range. It's been such a fantastic response, the whole range of comments. Paddy Ryan wrote a lot of comments. This is just a sample of hers. The madness began on the 17th of March with talk of panic buying. In 4 days of trading, we sold 250% more meat and pies than normal, which was far worse than Christmas because we weren't prepared and couldn't restock the supply chain in time. We came close to collapse and had to refuse orders for chicken because we simply hadn't got the quantity to satisfy demand. The next biggest decision was to offer home deliveries. At first, staff delivered orders on their way home. Then we bought a van and moved to afternoon deliveries. And it goes on like that. The vets thought they would be frontline workers when the March lockdown was announced, but they were not. All support staff were furloughed, and it was decided to lock the clinic doors and move consulting outside, with just the vets trying to cover the different clinics, as well as do online consulting from home. Another excerpt, others found it hard to be locked out of church. When services began, only 4 bell ringers were allowed in the tower, and they had to ring alternate bells to observe social distancing. Northwoods had a lovely submission, and they had problems with coffin supplies. Delivery time went from 1 week to 4 weeks, then 9 weeks. Meantime, demand for funerals increased. We normally do 2 funerals a week, but in one period we had 8 funerals come in under 12 hours. By the end of May, we had completed the same number as the whole of last year. And then another one, a local football coach did Zoom meetings with the kids and set silly challenges. Some are now competent in foreign languages, playing football with toilet rolls, and so on. And so that's just a snippet of some of the contributions. They're absolutely fantastic. I've had a conversation with Ina, who is helping, and we've come to the conclusion that the main document should be a bound volume that will stay in Much Wenlock archives. I can see, it's a good job Diane's not listening, because we may need to request some money, but with so many 50 plus pieces to put into a proper formal document, it would be a shame for pages to get lost. And we think probably a bound volume of those would be something fitting for the future. We also have the idea of people keep asking, people who've written a bit, well, can we read everybody else's? And so we are seriously thinking about some paperback versions which can be sold, not to make any money, but to recover expenses. And maybe when the plan is formed in a month or so, I'll come back to the council and after with some prices and see what you feel. But it does appear to be a very successful project, and I urge anybody who has not yet given me their comments, Mr. Mayor, and anybody else would like to contribute to it. We're still open, and it has been a most worthwhile project, as I'm sure when you come to read it, you will agree. Fantastic comments from all sorts of people in the town. And yes, Marcus, can I have?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I think it's important that this goes online.
Yes.
So it's a digital resource, even in preference to trying to publish books. And then it's free for anybody to use, isn't it?
Yeah. A copy like that will go to Shropshire Archives. I've asked if we can make available an online copy for them to keep in their archives. So that will be easily done.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Councillor Hill, for your hard work, and to the volunteer that's working with you. I will endeavour to edit my draft and get it ready to send over shortly. Councillor Nat Park, do you like to raise your views, please?
Oh, I was just going to say, echo what you've literally just said. I think it's a really great idea. And I have started mine, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you. You've got till, I won't say till Easter, but I'd like to have finished it by Easter. But so
okay. I've got a break from homeschooling.
But anybody else who feels they want to make any comments, particularly in the second lockdown, I think everybody is feeling really down, not much to look forward to, except the lucky recipients of the vaccines. Hopefully Milner will be cheering on a Saturday. So yes, I'll keep you posted. Thank you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. On the agenda it says to note, so I'll just say I propose that we thank and note Councillor Hill for her report. Seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item noted. Item 17, the High Sheriff for Shropshire's Outstanding Young Citizens Awards 2021. To note correspondence regarding the above and to whether to consider and make a nomination. I believe this, if I remember correctly, this was on the agenda last time, and it was requested that members, councillors would go away and please give some thought onto who could be a worthy recipient. I will like to mention two names who I've gone to and think of. First of them is Oren Stafford, and the second is Tom Quinn. Both have worked fantastically hard over the particularly the first lockdown and beyond in editing and creating some excellent online sermons and services that have been massively well received across the Wenlock group of parishes. It's obviously extends beyond our borders, but these two young lads are both Wenlock, and I think from the hard work that they've done in the editing and time spent, I would like to think that they'd be worthy participants. If anybody else had gone away, would anyone like to nominate anyone else or have their views on those nominations, please?
They sound very good, Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll second your proposal for those two.
Do we have any more that we'd like to add in at all, councillors? In that case, I've proposed to nominate Oren Stafford and Tom Quinn. It's been seconded by Councillor Hollyoake. All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Item 18, to consider response to the following consultation and any more received. 18A is Shropshire Council's budget consultation. As we know, Shropshire Council spend over £575 million every year delivering services to our local communities. A lot of this is spent on adult and social care, and there are 97% of the population of Shropshire who do not access this directly, but this is a growing number at the moment. We've been asked to consider a response, and it's quite a large document with a few appendixes. Councillors, I think it might be prudent to ask to set up a subcommittee of potentially 3 councillors to submit a response. if anyone would like to just get together before the deadline, which is the 28th of January. Sorry, town clerk? Yeah, sorry, Trudy, you're muted.
I was just going to say there's no obligation to submit a comment if there's no enthusiasm for doing so.
And so, councillors, we are unless we don't get any volunteers, I think we will potentially just let that just let that go. Your views, please.
Yes, we've noted it, Chairman.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. So just that item has been noted. I'll just take just for due diligence. Councillor Holly, you propose to note the correspondence but not respond. Can I have a seconder to that motion, please? Thank you, Jane. All those in favour? Motion carried. Item 19, census briefing. To consider information received regarding the 2021 consensus to be held on the 21st of March. So they've nominated, Shropshire Council's nominated Roger Bellham, who would be happy to come and present further information, respond to questions to us. But unless the town clerk can tell me otherwise, I understand that he's just asking for us to help raise awareness across Shropshire for people to respond to the census. So in that regard, I propose we use our social media channels and our notice boards to raise awareness and encourage people to respond to the census. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Thank you. All those in favour? Motion carried. Item 20, correspondence. To receive and note the following items. Item A, SARC information bulletin. B, Shropshire Council press releases. C, rural bulletins. D, community reassurance updates. E, NHS 111 stakeholder briefings. F, friendly bus COVID-19 update. G, Shropshire Hills area of natural beauty newsletter. And H, the link to Shropshire Council tree survey. I would like to propose that we note those items.
Yes, yes.
All those in favour? Motion carried. Item 21, agenda items for next town council meeting. Members are invited to suggest items for inclusion on the agenda for the next meeting. Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Jenkins, you're muted.
Pigeons, please. They've now decamped to the church, to the old police station, and to Bastard Hall. This is the white version of the pigeons. And I know that Councillor Hill objects to their being culled. I'd like to re-raise this problem, please. And secondly, already alluded to in the transport survey, but I think more importantly, the traffic, the possibility of rat running through the town, which we know is going to increase. And could we have a discussion about Chynton Street and King Street again, about the possibility of traffic calming, possible one-way systems, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, sorry, town clerk.
If you really want to talk about pigeons again, could you do that at the Finance Committee meeting?
Right. But to be honest, I mean, we'll have to discuss if we do want to speak about pigeons again. I mean, the thing is, we're only responsible for our own buildings and we are culling them as well. I understand the fact that they've moved on does partly make us bad neighbours, but we are culling them as well. There's literally someone going up and trapping them as it is. So we haven't got them on our buildings and the mess is eventually being cleared. Personally, I think with the culling that we're doing already, we have done enough. But Councillor Jenkins, I do take your point. And if you would like to propose that, we can have the vote to go on the agenda. Sorry, Trudy?
I was just going to say, can you hear me this time? Yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that arrangements are being made for trapping rather than culling.
Sorry, trapping. So the trapping is about to take place. So I wasn't sure if it already started or not.
No.
Can we discuss this at finance meeting, Chairman?
Yes, we can. So I've got to, okay. I was hoping we wouldn't have to discuss it at all personally. But in that case, will I get a proposal to discuss this on the finance meeting?
So
yeah, move.
Yeah. So seconded, Councillor White, are you seconding?
Sorry, so as a town councillor, are you responsible for pigeons everywhere?
No, We're only responsible for pigeons on our own building. So we've done our job. You could
So why are
argue.
we discussing it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we wasted I don't know how many hours talking about pigeons. Why are we going to discuss it again when it's not even on our buildings? I don't agree.
We're discussing it because they're still causing a problem with pooing in the streets. One actually stopped the traffic opposite Claire Derbyshire's opticians the other day, refused to move out of the road until somebody came across and waved his walking stick at it.
How big is this pigeon?
It's a white pigeon. They're an inbred thing. They're not wood pigeons.
They're
as
not
you
very
know.
big. They're very small.
Sorry, councillors, we've got a proposal by Councillor Jenkins, seconded by Mona Whiteman, Councillor Whiteman, to go on the finance agenda. All those in favour, if you'd like it to go on there, please raise your hand. All those against? I've got, sorry, apologies, Councillor Jenkins, we have a majority against not taking it further. But you mentioned regarding the transport. Now, we've got a transport report coming to the councillors, and there will be some items going on the agenda already from our previous mention. That will probably, I believe that does include Shineton Street, so that's already on there. Councillors, if I haven't got any other items for the agenda, I'd like to move on to item 22, which is the date of next meeting. To note that the next meeting will take place on Thursday, the 4th of February 2021. Excellent, I'll take that as noted. Whew, well, thank you very much, councillors. We've got through another one. Presumably the elections will go ahead in May. There's not money left.